Hi guys, it's Stephanie again, and you are tuned in to the review of Married at First Sight, Season 9, Episode 5. So I'm back. Thank you for all the messages last week when I was at the YouTube conference in Anaheim, California. It was really sweet that you guys messaged me and got to see some of the behind the scenes and meet a couple of family members and friends. So I was not able to watch last week's episode until last night, so let's just get into it. I was going to say this week's episode, but last week's episode was about the remainder of the honeymoon. So we watched them pretty much finish the honeymoon out, and they ended with getting ready to go home. So let's kick it off with Greg and Deonna. Greg and Deonna, to me, are, kind of moving along at a decent pace. They're getting to know each other. They're getting more comfortable. Greg and Deonna appear on the surface to still be a little uncomfortable, but I think it's just who they are as people, and how they're approaching this experience and this experiment. They seem a little awkward, but I think they're just a little awkward. I think Greg is so sweet. He's just a little awkward. We found him saying, I didn't give you a compliment today. And, he's not going to be that smooth guy. He's not. He's sweet, but he's going to be a little more logistical about the way that he does stuff. So he's fighting his natural inclination to give a compliment, and he's saying it, and she's saying, well, okay, that's great, don't give me that compliment. And it's going quite well. They're just figuring it out. In some ways they're awkward, in some ways they're kind of comfortable, because we see them on the beach hold hands, hug and kiss. We see them kiss before they go to sleep. So those are indications that they're comfortable with each other. They're very attracted to each other, especially Greg. Greg literally had me laughing out loud when he said that he had to go into the water so that nobody saw how attracted he was to his wife. So that was super cute. They're just getting to know each other. One of the big things that I saw for them is the conversation that they had at dinner before they ended up going home. It just slipped out that he had been engaged before. So Deonna was taken aback because he kind of threw it out there that they were talking about living with someone before, and yes, he had lived with someone, and it was his ex-fiance, and he wasn't really expecting to say that, and she definitely wasn't expecting to hear that. And I think she handled it well, because I thought she was gonna kind of get explosive or combative. We haven't really seen that with her, but I think that she has the tendency to become that way. So it was good that she was able to rein it in. And we all have those moments. I know I have, where I'm like, okay, tuck the crazy in, girl, because you can't show out in here. And so I was glad that she was able to keep her composure, and he was able to share that, because here's the thing, and you have to be careful, and we all need to work on this. If you want your significant other or your spouse to be able to share with you, then you have to give them the space to do that. You don't want the experience to be bad, so then it conditions them to believe, I cannot share with this person because they're going to snap, or it's going to turn into an argument, or they're going to take it and use it against me later, even if it's something that's a little bit frustrating. So it was good to see him talk about that and basically say, listen, it was a very toxic situation. It was a bad relationship. I was not the best version of myself. And ultimately, it did not work out. And, they're very faith-based. They both talked about churches and the importance of going to church and growing spiritually together in this relationship. So he said, obviously, this is not the plan that God had for my life, to be with someone else. And I think that truly resonated with her. And she said, everyone has a past. And it's true, everyone has a past, and we don't really like to hear about that stuff. That's, some people's past can be a trigger, just because in some subconscious way you feel like you're still competing, or you're not the only one, or you're not the first, and the reality is you're not. And it doesn't really matter before this. There are certain things you discuss. Yeah, she needed to know that he was engaged before and that type of history, but beyond that, you weren't a factor, and he wasn't a factor, and now you guys are here present together. So I think that they have great potential, because I like the way that they're able to have some dialogue that can be uncomfortable, and it doesn't turn into something that is negative. They even talked about the way that they want to address issues, and Deonna said, listen, I like to just address them head on. I don't like to wait and say 3 hours ago or 3 weeks ago we had this issue, and he agreed. I think with her, though, as they learn, it won't always work that way. There isn't the time to always address something. You're going to pick your battles. You may wait for a time to discuss something that happened a while ago. Like, I know my husband and I have monthly family meetings, and we have like a whole setup for it, and we talk about finances, and we talk about trips, and we coordinate our schedules and things coming up, and we kind of have this whole crest and mantra for our family, us together, and our future family when we have children. One of the components of our family meeting at the end is to have like an emotional area of that meeting where we discuss anything that we want to discuss with no reprimand. So you cannot get upset. You have to listen, actively listen, and be willing to take in the other person's feedback or thoughts or feelings or whatever. And so sometimes that is the best time to bring up something that maybe isn't of high concern, but we want to address it, or maybe it is of high concern and we're like, listen, this is the best time to do this because you can't say anything right now, or it can't turn into an argument. You really have to be listening with intention. So I think they will figure that out. I think addressing stuff and head on is really important because you don't want stuff to sit. But I think there are things that can wait, and they'll figure that out. But they were able to have that conversation and wrap it up beautifully. So Greg and Deonna are doing pretty well to me. I'm interested to see how they move along as they move in together, because she's been single for 10 years and he has been single for 2 years or 2.5 years, and the last relationship was very toxic. So this is all new for them, so it will be interesting to watch them as they progress. So that's Greg and Deonna. Moving on, we are going to talk about Keith and Iris. So I piggyback with Keith and Iris because when Greg and Deonna were talking about how they like to address stuff, it was based on the conversation that the guys had with discussing, has anything come up? Have you guys argued? And Keith basically said that at the end of the day or every 2 days, they kind of discuss some things that they have to work on, some negatives. I forgot the specific word, but some negatives that they have to work on to be open. Now, that's very structured. That works well for them. And I think that really stems from, if I can guess, it feels like it stems from Iris, because Iris is very structured. Iris is structured in a way where this has worked for her, and also because she's I don't know, she's young, she's fresh, she has this inexperience, not to say she's not experienced, but she has this young, inexperienced nature about her where it's like, let's do this. And once again, I think they will learn their dynamic that, that's not going to work long term, and you don't have to choose, you don't have to pick. I'm glad that that's going well for them now, because it could be detrimental if within the first 5 days of your marriage or 6 days of your marriage, you're talking about the things you need to work on all the time. If I could advise them, I would say, or anybody, I would say, do highlights and lowlights. If we want to talk about it once a week or every 2 weeks or something, let's talk about some highlights and lowlights. Because if we're not always talking about the lowlights, then we're completely dismissing the highlights. We're taking the highlights for granted because it's like, oh, that should be happening. That is how it's supposed to be. But we're focusing our energies on the things that we need to improve on, not the things that we're doing well. So I heard that, but I didn't really hear them discuss the things that they're doing well. So I hope that they don't get caught up in that whole thing. But I do like that they're able to have that conversation, have that dialogue, and move past it. They are, I think, growing well together as well. They're joking around a lot. They're getting to know each other. He lost his ring on the beach for a few minutes. I feel like most men have probably done that. I feel like most men have probably done that at some point. And I think they created some dramatic moment around it, and Iris was freaking out, and we see little touches of how they're going to get on each other's nerves though, because he at that point was like, why are you getting so bent out of shape? But he didn't say bent out of shape. He was kind of annoyed in the way that she was freaking out, because he was actively searching for it. And I think his whole thing was, acting this way is not going to change anything. Like, let's just chill. He seems to be the more chill one. She seems to be the more frantic one. And so they find it, and, crisis averted. But if you recall, when they did another activity and they were on the boat, he says, why are you talking to me like you're my mom? Which that's going to be a thing for her to really work on, because I can see her really doing it. And she says, I'm not talking to you like I'm your mom. Your mom told me to keep you alive. And they make a lighthearted banter about it and they move on. But that's a thing that can become like a big thing. Men don't like to be mommed. Women naturally have this desire or this this natural state of nurturing, and we just see things differently. I mean, we're different people. Men and women are different people. We see things differently. We think about things differently. We might be a little more cautious, and we might see something that we have to redirect. And the reality is your husband's not your son. And so that redirection over time can feel like he's being mommed, and that will trigger him and it will become a thing. So I really hope that they find a way to navigate through that. And I think that they will navigate that whole thing with trial and error, because I see it happening again, because she is that way and he is a little more chill, and that is a great balance for them, and they will balance each other out, but it won't come without some conflict, because those are just two different vibes, and we already just saw like little touches of that. So the fact that it was said already, that feeling I think will grow just because of the dynamic of who they are as people. But they'll work through it. They continue to be like a very pleasant couple to watch. I enjoy watching them. He's very patient. He's not pushing anything. She's very grateful that she was matched with someone who is so patient and who's not pushing her to be anybody other than who she is. So that is Keith and Iris. So next we have Matt and Amber. Matt and Amber are interesting to me because even though I like their vibe together, I don't necessarily think that if they met each other, they would be matched. And I guess that's what this whole experiment is for. The dynamic is a little weird to me. But I think that they genuinely like each other, and maybe that's the surprise, that they genuinely like each other, not because they're not nice people or they don't, get along together. I just don't think that they would have seen each other at an event and made eyes. I don't necessarily get that from them, but they're getting along really, really well. What I like about Amber, but what may be a little detrimental, is how self-sacrificing she is. So we remember, if you guys recall, in the matching episode, they talked to her sister, and her sister's concern was that she has given so much of herself in past relationships that she doesn't want her to get hurt and give herself to a fault in this relationship. And we see Amber talk about how she is letting her walls down, but she's afraid to trust. And there's some stuff that's behind there, and we'll probably find out about that, because up until this point she's just been like, this is my husband, I'm going balls to the walls, like I'm just gonna go 100%, like this is him, I'm not going to, I know we just got married, but this is it. And we see her kind of recoil a little bit, so maybe she's getting really close to him, and she said that, and she's afraid of letting those walls down and being in a vulnerable position to be hurt. Here's the thing, Matt seems like a stand-up guy to me, but there's a lot there. There's a lot there that he is holding onto from his past. There's a lot there that maybe he's not necessarily dealing with. And I think that he's committed to this marriage. I do, because he wants so desperately to have what his family had or his parents had before they got a divorce. And he wants to make it work beyond that. And what may be detrimental for him is he's kind of, in a way, subconsciously competing with something that he can't. I mean, you're already 27 years too late, or however long they were married. You can't really compete with that. You have to be in it for yourself. And I see him working really hard, but I hope that he lets his walls down, because he is very guarded, and Amber is not. Amber, I mean, she's a little guarded, but Amber's kind of like an open book. And one of the things that we see her being so open with is her willingness to support his business. So here's the concern with me and Matt. During the interviews, they asked Matt, because he plays basketball overseas, are you willing to settle down in Charlotte? And he says yes, that's what he wants. He wants to start his business. He wants to settle down. Now all of a sudden it's like, well, if I can't support myself, I may need to take a contract to play ball 7 to 10 months a year. At first I kept hearing 6 months, but then at some point it was 7 to 10 towards the end of the episode. Either way, it's a very significant amount of time, even for a seasoned marriage, otherwise a new marriage. So that's a concern for me, because if you knew that that was something that could possibly be, you shouldn't have done this experiment, because it's not really fair to your wife. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to your marriage. And we can't expect to plant roots somewhere when you have to get up and go. And there's just way too much relying on the possibility of this business. And so that was a concern for me, because when they asked him that during the interviews, he was like, yes, I want to stay in Charlotte. Definitely, I want to stay in Charlotte. And now it's kind of like, well, if I can't support myself, we got to go, and I may have to do this. And one of the guys even said, would you want her to come with you and travel with you? And he's like, yeah, she can get a job there. That would be cool. It was very non-committal to me. And you have a wife now, so it's not like, yeah, it would be kind of cool, like a girlfriend trailing along. No, ideally, that's what I would like. I want her to go with me, or I don't want to do that. There was not that much emotion geared towards staying. It was kind of like, whatever I got to do. And that sounds like a single man. The whole whatever I got to do, very laissez-faire, that is not indicative of somebody who's like, I don't want to say committed, because I think he's committed idea-wise, but like your actions have to match that, and you have to really do some things that maybe are uncomfortable in order to make that work, not kind of just sway wherever the wind blows. And finances are important, but like I said, if this was something that could have come up, then maybe you shouldn't have done it, because it's not really fair to her. So as they are having dinner, we see her say, listen, I make X amount of dollars. I'll be willing to support you while you get the business up. This is what we're doing. I love that she did that, because that's indicative of true relationship, true marriage. It wouldn't be the first time that one person holds the other person down while they're building a business. I mean, marriage is a partnership at the end of the day. And so her willingness to jump right in, like a seasoned wife, like what a seasoned husband would do for somebody that she just met, shows her level of commitment and shows that she's a very selfless person. But I knew, I knew that would rub him the wrong way, because he seems very independent. He seems, very prideful, and I think a lot of men are, a lot of men don't want to be taken care of, but I knew that it would not go well. Even though she was offering that support in the purest form, I knew that it wouldn't go well, and it didn't. So we see them kind of get into their first little tiff about their miscommunication, because she gets upset because he said something to her on their way back from dinner that was indicative of not wanting to be taken care of, and he misconstrues her saying, I can hold it down. I make XYZ. That's totally fine for us and a family and everything. He kind of made it, he interpreted it as her taking on that he asked for that help and that he needed that help. And that's kind of wrapped up in all of his own insecurity that he's projecting, because clearly that's not what she said. She was very clear about, listen, I can do this, we can do that. I will support you while you get your business off the ground. Like, don't worry about it, because I don't want you to leave. And I'm glad that when he brought up him possibly having to go take a contract, that she was very direct, like, that's not going to work. I'm just going to put it out there. I don't want you to leave. I'm glad that she didn't say, well, we'll figure it out. Because he even said, well, it hasn't come up yet. So he was trying to kind of move it away. Okay, well, I kind of threw it out there, because later on that'll come up. Well, I threw it out there. I told you. She was very direct, like, I don't want that to happen. Here is how I'm going to solidify that not happening. I love that she did that. That was like, no nonsense. I don't have time for BS. I waited to get married. I did this experiment. No, I'm not interested in you leaving for 6 months or 7 months or however long it would be. So I'm glad that she said that. Eventually they were able to have a dialogue and clear it up. She was on one side of the bed, he was on the other. I like that he said, listen, come here, let's talk, because if we don't talk, then this is going to be the rest of the night. I like that he took that initiative to create the beginning of that dialogue so that they can clean it up, they can hear each other, and then they can move on. So they have some promise there. They are going to have some bumps in the road. I think they all will, because that's just life and that's just marriage. But the dynamic of who they are will be interesting to see. I really hope that he gets it together in terms of how committed he is to staying where they are to nurture their marriage, because it won't work if he goes somewhere else. And he even says, I've had past relationships that didn't work out because of the distance. I don't know why he think this would. But that time will tell how that works out and how they move along. But I was glad to see them have a good dialogue about it and just move past it. And that's what it's about. That's what marriage is about. That's all relationships, communicating effectively and really taking the time to listen to each other. So that is Matt and Amber. Last but not least, we have Elizabeth and Jamie. So I just want to say something real quick because I forgot the last episode to bring this up. So I'm just going to start off with it. I really, really am annoyed with Jamie and Elizabeth, with them both lying to the experts, during the interview process about kids. Like, that really boiled my blood, because that's like a deal breaker. Kids is a deal breaker, and it's not fair. They were matched perfectly because they matched, two liars together, but they were matched perfectly because it's not fair that you do that. Because what if you were matched with someone where kids were non-negotiable, like I have to have kids, and you say, yeah, at some point, just trying to be so selfish that you just hope to get chosen, and you make it work, and now you drop this bomb on someone. I mean, it just worked out. It just happened to work out that they were matched together, having done the same thing. But that's really frustrating to see, because that could have ruined the potential of a relationship, or ruined the potential for someone who was really committed and came in 100% transparent, to be matched with someone who was like, oh, I said it because everybody's on me about saying it. Like, stop. Like, you're in the interview. Like, this is where you can be your most authentic self, and there's no issue with that. You get to do that and hope for the best if they choose you. So that really irritated me for them, because it's not fair, and people have done that in this experiment, and we've seen that hasn't worked out. I mean, sometimes it doesn't work out when people are themselves. So that was really irritating. If you're out there and you're thinking about doing this show, because I actually had somebody reach out to me saying that they applied to the one in DC and they got a call back. So people are out here really doing this stuff. If you are trying to do this show, or trying to be matched with anybody in real life, because there's matchmakers all around, be real, because you might get matched, and then you might get this thing that you knew you didn't want, but you didn't say it. So that's my 2 cents. That's my soapbox on them from the week prior. This week, though, to start fresh with Jamie and Elizabeth, they are really surprising me. They really are. Like, I've never, I wouldn't say judge, but I've never misread a couple, because I just usually am spot on with them. But I did not see them having this vibe. I did see them balancing each other out and having a positive influence on each other, because he's so tightly wound, even though he's kind of sarcastic and funny, and he can be very chill actually, but he's regimented in the way that he kind of sees things and does things, and she's the complete opposite. So I thought that maybe, although that would be beneficial, that might burn out very quickly, but they really have taken a liking to each other. It's nice. It's nice to see. I'm surprised though, because I just didn't pick up on the vibe being that serious so quickly. They even said that they loved each other. Like, he said that he loved her. That blew my mind, because I was like, what? Okay. And towards the end of the episode, she says it back, or she said she's falling in love with him. It's a lot. Listen, I can't say that love happens at any time. Okay, there are people who believe in love at first sight. There are people who, hell, they're married at first sight, so why wouldn't they believe in love at first sight? There are people who don't believe in love at first sight. There are people who feel like love requires a time frame. There are people who feel like love requires a certain level of knowing. I don't say that I know when love should happen. I personally, so this is not necessarily professional, but I personally believe that true love can only exist. Well, I won't say that. For me, true love really exists in all knowing. So when you really love someone, you have to love the part of them that you hate. And that is truly love. I feel like that initial, I love this person, it's real. But I think there's a test that comes with that love. And a lot of people, when they really get to know someone, they don't love them. That it was just infatuation, because you really have to love the part of that person that you hate, and still love them, and still find a way to see them in such a beautiful way, or to want to commit to a life with them. It's easy to fall in love on the honeymoon. I'll say that. So I'm not taking away from that. People can meet and fall in love, and it lasts forever. it doesn't have to take a certain amount of time, but I just believe that loving someone and knowing all of those things is just a different, that's the truest form of love, because it's not convenient. I don't think loving someone is convenient, even though it's a beautiful thing. So, you know, I saw that and I was like, okay, that's cute. Yay, y'all. But I don't know. They're getting along well. Elizabeth's antics to me are getting old already. Like, I'm already over them. I'm already over the, like, I wouldn't even call it a diva. I would call it just spoiled. You know, you're not the only one on the boat. They take a boat to a catamaran to Antigua, like a private island. She's freaking out. I mean, everybody, with the exception of all the women, with the exception of, I would say, Deonna, is not really loving the experience, yet she has to hyper focus. It's like the one person, if we're all cold outside, it's the one person who talks about how cold it is. We're all cold. Why is it so cold for you? You know, it's obnoxious. It's spoiled. She starts complaining about it before they even go, and she sets the tone. And when she was complaining about it in the room, I was like, okay, she's about to show out, because she is setting the tone for that. And Jamie is really more relaxed guy, so he checks out, as we've seen with their first argument, and she lies about that. She didn't even want it. Well, she just holds the truth from the other girls because she just doesn't want them to know anything. But he kind of checks out during that stuff. And you see him kind of checking out again. Like, I don't even want to do this. Like, he's not really about the drama. He doesn't really want to deal with that. It's just kind of too much. And it was too much watching it, you know. I get it, because I've been in different countries doing that stuff. I don't like it either. I just kind of grin and bear it, even if I'm mortified, because that sometimes I have been. Grin and bear it and move on, because you're like not the only one. So they get there, they have their time, they have a good time, and then on the way back, the water's even more choppy, and she's just freaking out, and she gets off on the boat, and she's just, you know, she curses a little bit, she storms out, and frankly, she looks like a spoiled idiot. Like, I have nothing positive to say about that moment. I was very irritated, because it's just so unnecessary, and it shows it's a pattern. This is how she is in life that we have seen. It's a pattern that starts from being overly doted on in your childhood, you know, because, and in your adulthood, because we see that they have had these interactions with her dad, showing, you know, how much he dotes on her and his little princess. And so this little princess attitude is continuing on in adulthood, and it's unnecessary. It's gonna get old quick. Like, they clean it up, the next day they talk, and she's sorry that she acted that way, and he's like, you know, I'm sorry that I kind of shut down and I was offended by you. But he should have been offended, because she was being rude and she was talking to him disrespectfully, not in a way that you really should talk to anybody, more or less your spouse. And so he takes it on, and I didn't know you were feeling that way, and I didn't know you threw up. And, you know, they're cleaning it up for now. It will get old quick, because, like, as life happens, like, it's easy to, you know, be in a good space. Oh, it's a honeymoon, I didn't know, and I'll do better. But, like, when we're home and we have stuff going on and work, and you're tired and we're trying to figure out what's going on, coordinating schedules, that attitude unnecessarily without something really happening and prompting that is completely unnecessary. So I foresee that getting old quick, because I'm over it. And I'm sure some of you guys are over it. So other than that, they're getting along well. I mean, hell, they said that they loved each other, so clearly they are into each other, and they're good for each other in certain ways, but time will tell as far as the longevity of their relationship. So that's all. Thank you for waiting for me, guys. I will see you guys soon, because tonight's episode comes on, and we'll have another review for you this week. So don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share, and I will see you guys in a couple of days.